Final seconds of the game, a chance to score, and the chance has gone begging. If your business's commerce platform keeps missing the target on golden opportunities, get the MVP you deserve. Get Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide. Whether you're a garage entrepreneur or IPO ready, Shopify is the only tool that you need to start, run, and grow your business without the struggle. Shopify puts you in control of every sales channel. So whether you're selling signed football boots from Shopify's in-person POS system or you're vending vintage shirts on Shopify's all-in-one e-commerce platform, you are covered. And once you've reached your audience, Shopify has the internet's best converting checkout to help you turn them from browsers to buyers. What I love about Shopify is how, no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify gives you everything you need to take control and take your business to the next level. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. And Shopify is truly a global force, powering Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across over 170 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. This is Possibility, powered by Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ranks, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ranks to take your business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/ranks.
Hello, this is international football commentator Derek Ray, and you're listening to the Ranks FC podcast.
Hello, Rank Squad, and welcome to Ranks FC. It's your favourite football podcast, back for another week. My name is Jack Collins, and I'll be your host today. And joining me is our transfer guru in the last days of the January transfer window, Mr. Dean Jones. How you doing, mate?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, what a weird old window we've been peering into and wanting to jump out of, I guess, at times across this month. It's really not lived up to what we would usually expect from a transfer window, given what we've seen from recent ones. I was warned coming into it that it would be slow, it wouldn't be great, but I really didn't think the fall off would be this stark compared to past windows. I mean, a year ago, the January transfer window, we saw over £800 million spent across the Premier League.
Yeah.
And right now, I mean, there's such a fall off. I mean, we are going to go over £50 million, but at the moment, as it stands right now, recording this, we're below £50 million being spent. Once you start throwing in, okay, well, Crystal Palace are going to spend £20 odd million on a Blackburn midfielder, and this will happen, that will happen. The overall spend might get to about 100 million, I guess, or maybe a bit over, but we're going to feel so far away from where we were. And obviously, the last summer window was a mega one too. I hope we can have some late activity. And I do get the feeling there's going to be a flurry of deals, but it ain't going to be the sort of stuff we've seen in the last couple of windows, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? And look, normally, I think this kind of speaks for it. Normally, when it comes to deadline day or the week coming up to deadline day, we do a full episode on transfers that we expect to happen, transfers in the offing. They don't always all come through, but there's definitely kind of movement. And today, we're not doing that. We're actually going to look a little bit more broadly at the transfer picture. We're going to talk about 5 players, or a couple more than 5 players, who might be the next £100 million transfer. But those transfers are not coming in this transfer window. And instead, we're going to have to kind of throw it forward to look at the summer. And I think it's indicative of what this window has been like. But that kind of leads us nicely on to this first bit. We are going to talk about deadline day. We are going to talk about what might happen and some of those things that you kind of alluded to there that are still in the offing, even if they're not maybe the mega deals that we expected. But before we get into that, it's worth asking the question, is this a return to normality, DJ? Is it a kind of sense that over the last few windows in particular, we've seen the market explode? And look, some people call it the Neymar effect after that transfer to PSG from Barcelona that basically threw the entire market into kind of chaos. I like to call it the James Tompkins effect because I remember Crystal Palace heavily overpaying for a relatively average Premier League centre-back a couple of years ago. Is this the market kind of levelling out? And is this the influence of the new PSR regulations, the FFP regulations that we've seen? Is this a good thing for football in general?
I can't see it lasting, if I'm honest. I think it's a bit of reality check for sure. And the profit and sustainability regulations that we're hearing talked about a lot this week have definitely had an impact. I think that Everton having points deducted definitely rattled a few teams. Obviously, Nottingham Forest getting a punishment too. Overspending is something that clubs are realising isn't going to be okay, so they are having to be a bit cautious. You think back to a year ago and you got Leeds and Southampton spending 50 million pound in January and trying to stay in the division. And now, as I've said at the top of the show, you're getting 50 million pounds spent across the entirety of the Premier League. Something's clearly happened to shake people up, because you're not seeing Burnley, Sheffield United and Luton throwing that sort of money around at the moment. But I also feel that this is a reflection of the league right now. And I feel that there's not a lot of threat to half the teams in the league that might usually be worried about going down. So I think usually you might have had the likes of Fulham, or maybe even given the positions that teams are in at the moment, I think you might have found a situation where Fulham or Crystal Palace, maybe Brentford, even Nottingham Forest in their situation would be looking to find a way to overhaul their squads. Forest, to be fair, Forest might be one of the busier teams on deadline day because they're trying to get a couple out so they can get a couple in. And that might actually end up working for them if they can bring in the likes of Gio Reyna and Sam Johnston. But I think that most people are in agreement that the bottom three is going to be the bottom three. And if it's not, it will probably be Everton. Maybe it'll be Nottingham Forest. So there's not that fear factor to go and spend. And then at the top end, I don't think that in past years we would have seen people accept that they're not going to make the top four. But Man United, Chelsea and Newcastle, they're all more than 10 points adrift of the top four places. And they've got the likes of Tottenham, Aston Villa to now properly contend with. I think they genuinely don't think they can make it. And there's an acceptance that, okay, well, foot on the ball here. Let's not put ourselves in jeopardy further down the line. And let's be sensible. If a good deal comes our way, we'll consider it. If a loan deal comes our way, we'll consider it. We cannot risk rocking the boat here and overspending just to try and chase down that fourth spot, which isn't looking very likely unless we sign someone ridiculous. Look, Karim Benzema maybe could have had that sort of effect, but there's not many players you could really count on that would be available in this market that could do that. So I genuinely think that, yes, there's the threat of being punished for overspending, but I also do think that a lot of teams just feel like they don't need to spend, like Fulham. There's all this talk about, should they spend on Broja? Should they spend on Andre? Should they do this at centre-back? And I think the ownership are probably like, should we just leave it? Nothing's really going to happen to us this season. We're going to end up mid-table no matter what.
Yeah, well, we hope that doesn't come back to bite, this Fulham ownership in particular. But we're recording this pre the game at Everton. Maybe if there's a shock result and a 4-0 loss at home, that might spark some action in the camp. Is that an element of kind of dominoes as well, I suppose? Because you're looking at the teams around you, below you. And last year, I think there was that sense that, the teams right at the bottom of the table started to pick up players and try to overhaul the squads, as you mentioned. And it kind of springs everyone else into life. Well, if they're improving, we need to improve in order to stay ahead. And that kind of hasn't filtered through in any kind of sense.
Also didn't work, though, did it? If you think of Southampton signing Suleimana, at the time, did you think that was a good deal at the time?
I thought it was a lot of pressure on a young player who hadn't played in the league before to come in and be the difference. But in terms of actually, his talent levels, I mean, fine. Like no bother with that issue. It's just that, when you are in these situations, and Southampton were a young squad to begin with. I know you're not particularly pointing on that deal but you have to be smart with these things as well as looking at players who are talented. And I think that there was a lot of panic. And, you can look at Leeds, for example, on the other
Leeds
hand.
with Rutter.
Well, exactly. But Jorginho Rutter has been phenomenal in the Championship this season. So and look, you'd expect that from a player who costs that amount of money coming in, etc. Although I thought that was an overpay. You're looking at it and going, okay, that has come off in the long run, but it wasn't enough to change things around last year. Would they have been able to get him for a more reasonable fee in the summer? Probably. They probably would have. And that's where it all starts to get a bit mucky here.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. But, I think if you were those teams that are currently in the bottom three, you then look down to the Championship, look what teams are experiencing now, going down, and fancying yourself to just come back up as well. I think you'd probably be giving yourself a good chance of doing that. So, yeah, I think there's quite a few facets to this, but ultimately, everybody's just a little bit scared. I mean, we're living through a cost of living crisis on a day-to-day basis as individuals and trying to work our way through that. Everyone's complaining they haven't got money. It's nice to see a bit of reflection in that in the Premier League, to be honest, because, I mean, despite the fact that football is an escape from reality, sometimes you do want to see other people having similar problems. So to suddenly
or at
learn,
least it reflecting you, right?
Yeah, exactly. You'd like to. It's kind of been. I just think not rewarding, that's the wrong word, but like in terms of how we look at it, like you said at the top, is it nice to see that this has leveled out? Yeah, it has been. I genuinely don't think it will continue. I think that we will get to the summer window and I expect Manchester United to go pretty big. I think Chelsea will look to make their mark again. We're going to talk about them across this episode. Arsenal will have more room to go and make big signings. And on the back of this window, we'll start to understand better. I might even do an episode around PSR and what teams' ability to spend next summer will be, so we can get a better idea of where everybody stands.
Yeah, it sounds like one we can come back to in the future, maybe next week.
Ranking PSR ratings. Wow.
We'll find a sexier hook for it than that. Just on tomorrow then, and today as you're listening to this, deadline day, what can we expect? It feels like lower level moves. We're not going to see any blockbuster transfers, but what can we expect from the movers and shakers? Because there will be some on deadline day.
Yeah, I mean, you'll have West Ham are always doing stuff. Right now, they're trying to offload a couple of Fornals. Looks like he's about to agree a deal to Betis, and Ben Rama's about to go to Lyon, and they've been trying to get deals done for Jota and Osimhen, and so they need to. As we're recording this, that neither of those two deals going particularly well, so they'll look to find an alternative. Earlier on in the window, they were looking at Wilfred Gnonto. I still think that will be out of reach, but we'll have to wait and see. Maybe they could find a way to make something like that happen, given how his things are going at Leeds right now.
Yeah.
Nottingham Forest, as I mentioned, I expect them to have a reasonably busy couple of days. Nothing's going to be like earth-shattering, mate. You know, the deals that we thought might be coming, like at the start of the window for Man United signing another striker, Tottenham spending £50 million on Conor Gallagher, anything like that. Arsenal maybe signing a striker and a midfielder or defender. Like, no signs of any of that at the moment. And I think that's going to remain the case as we start to tick through this, the last couple of days of this window. I'd like to give hope, but generally I do think that Burnley will sign a defender. Little things like that will happen. None of it's going to rock your world.
Yeah. I mean, especially at a top level.
Sorry,
right? It's going to.
Adam Wharton to Crystal Palace is quite a big deal. I mean,
I'm really interested by this. I really, really do.
I mean, in
him.
other windows, maybe you wouldn't be, but I think that this a £20-odd million transfer for Crystal Palace in this window is pretty significant. And actually, this is a very good player, isn't it?
Yeah, very, very talented. There's an amazing feature on Scouted with him, an interview with Adam Wharton. It's well worth your time. It's on their free bits and bobs, so it's easy enough to check out. But really interesting reader, really interesting interview, and looks like he's Premier League bound and someone that's been excellent in the Championship this season. Palace have signed a right back as well for the first time, I think, since 2014. How about that? They've signed a right back for a fee.
Wow.
For the first time since 2014. It's going to be very interesting to see how that one develops.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think the last right back that Palace signed for a fee might have been Martin Kelly from Liverpool.
Wow.
There you go. That's a real callback. A real callback.
Yeah, throwback for you.
Well, if that's that's where we've got to on this transfer window. We're reminiscing about Martin Kelly deals.
This is why we are throwing it to the future, mate, because we don't want to talk about people scrapping around and signing players for the future and all this. We want to hear about the big ones, and that's why I thought, you know what? Let's talk about the next £100 million footballer.
Exactly, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing after the break. Don't go anywhere.
New year, new rank squad. Kick off 2024 with Factor's ready-to-eat meal delivery service. It takes the stress out of your meal planning and assists your goals for the new year. The chef-crafted meals are so good, even pro footballers would benefit from them. But here's what I like. Factor also now offers loads of snack options like breakfast, smoothies, juices, snacks, exactly the sort of stuff I'm trying to improve in my own hectic life. So, if you want some guru wisdom, then here's my advice. Head to factormeals.com/ranks50 and use code ranks50 to get 50% off. That's code ranks50 at factormeals.com/ranks50 to get 50% off. I talk about this all the time, but I really do love coffee, Rank Squad. I've tried pretty much everything there is to offer out there, but recently I came across a new coffee experience that has blown my mind. Laird Superfood Creamers are crafted from the highest quality, all-natural, real food ingredients. I really don't think I'll be going back to anything else. My coffee journey feels complete. Are you ready to feel more energised, focused and supported? Go to lairdsuperfood.com and add nourishing plant-based foods to fuel you from sunrise to sunset. Use our promo, RANKS15, at checkout to save 15% off your purchase today. Our promo code, RANKS15, at checkout to save 15% off your purchase today.
Welcome back to the Ranks FC podcast. It's time for our main segment. And as we discussed, we are going to be talking about the next £100 million transfer, having a look at who might be the next to break the 9-figure mark. Dean, what's the ranking looking like?
It's quite good, actually. I've got quite a good list here. I have to admit, I always assumed that Mbappé would be the next £100 million footballer that we would be seeing. But obviously, given the current state of his contract, he'll be leaving for free if he was to go. And it's only if he ends up signing a new deal that we'll actually see Mbappé going for any sort of big sum. So we'll have to wait to see exactly what happens with that. But I think one of the things to look out for in the coming days is the knock-on effect that Mbappé will have, no matter if he leaves PSG free or not in the summer, because this guy's impact across football is going to be felt no matter what happens. So there's a reason I won't be ranking Mbappé in this right now, but he does have an influence throughout the episode. So I just wanted to throw his name in at the top because he's obviously a very important player when it comes to the most expensive players in the world, because he's basically the best one.
It's weird, isn't it, to think about he's in this conversation and yet he's just firmly out of it because it looks like he's moving on a free. And that's wild.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Like, he could be £100 million, £200 million.
Player in the world went for free.
For free. It could be £200 million footballer, but he's going to be free. But at number 5, here's a bit of a rogue one. Marcus Rashford. When I was putting this list together today, it was feeling I didn't want it to be too obvious. You know, I can't make it up. I can't just throw footballers into a £100 million list. But I thought, well, I don't want it to be names that people would just reel off the top of their head. And I thought, you know what? Marcus Rashford actually deserves to be in this list as a potential £100 million transfer, because Man United have got a big decision on their hands in terms of how they actually deal with Marcus Rashford in the coming months. Now, I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of what's going on in his personal life right now, because to be honest, I don't know quite how bad it is, and I don't know the limitations of the whole scenario. But what we do know is that Marcus Rashford was left out of Man United's team at the weekend. We've seen the reports of him being away and phoning in to not be at training, and reports around the reasons for that. Now, they've got a big decision here. We've seen what happened with Jadon Sancho. Jadon Sancho wasn't reintegrated into the squad after a fallout with Ten Hag. Rashford, it seems, already is going to be reintroduced and is going to be allowed to work his way back. But there are also stories coming out that there are figures around Man United that really are surprised at the way things are going for him. And there's a fear that perhaps whatever's going on in his personal life is going too far and is affecting him as a footballer. I think, given the situation right now, Man United will be feeling maybe we should have cashed in when PSG last showed interest. And today, all of a sudden, there was a report suggesting that PSG might be interested if Rashford was to come back on the radar for a transfer. And that's interesting because I think PSG is pretty much United's only hope of being able to sell Marcus Rashford if it's not possible to turn around this situation at the football club. This is a player that's obviously born and bred Man United, basically, born in the area, raised through the academy, brought through as the next best thing, the poster boy for the club, and somebody that you thought would reflect the fan base. But since him being somebody that was celebrated so much during COVID and lockdown to where he is right now, it's a very different person we're looking at. And if you don't know the ins and outs of his situation over the past week or so, then by all means go and press pause and go and read about it, because I don't want to go into all the details right now. But whether quite how far his social life is derailing his professional life, we won't really know. But it's up to Ten Hag to deal with this. If Ten Hag's going to survive as Man United manager, then he has to be careful about how he deals with this. And I also think if Ten Hag doesn't survive at Man United, does another manager want to inherit more problems? You've already got issues with Sancho, you've got issues with Antony, and now you've got problems with Marcus Rashford. That could have been one hell of a front three once upon a time. And now you're looking at three players that you'd probably just accept offers for if they came in on all fronts.
Yeah.
Marcus Rashford, if he was to go, if they were to decide to sell him, would cost £100 million or upwards.
Would he? Now, the only reason I kind of ask that with the tone of maybe disdain is that not because I don't think that their talent is there to justify that kind of fee, especially with the money that's been thrown around in recent years for players. But we're coming off the back of a down year for Marcus Rashford. Now, a down year can be a down year. That's fine. That's not a career ending. It's not fatal, any of those things. And there might be loads of things going in the background of what's happened over the last week and all of the reports that have come out of Belfast. But more than that, the kind of point is, if Manchester United are willing to sell, and obviously the noises will always be they're not going to sell a player like Marcus Rashford because, they believe in having that homegrown, Carrington-fed academy system that kind of is the lifeblood and backbone of Manchester United. But if it comes to it, and someone put a £70 million offer on the table, and there was a question mark over what next for Marcus Rashford, would Manchester United be looking at that and going, that allows us to reinvest? And that actually might be the kicker here, because if Manchester United don't want to sell Rashford, and let's put that at one end of a spectrum and say they don't want to sell him, then almost no amount of money, obviously everyone has a price, but there are little amounts of money that people would be willing to pay would get him out of the club. But if they are willing to sell him and the situation has changed and they do want this overhaul and they think that the time has come to part ways, etc., then surely there also comes a point where you're like, we might have to accept below what we consider to be the market average for him in order to actually get this overhaul cooking.
I can't see it for the life of me, to be honest. I mean, Marcus Rashford's 26 years old, England international, 4 years left on his contract, highest paid player at the club. There's no way they can sell him for £70 million. I mean, Ivan Toney's worth more than £70 million. So Marcus Rashford has to be, given everything he's already achieved in the game and knowing that he is a much better footballer than Ivan Toney when he's on top of his game.
Sure, but Ivan Toney is worth an X amount of money to Brentford in particular because of the difference between where they are in the league table, potentially the difference between survival and relegation, etc. Those things are slightly more obvious. Whereas with Rashford, and especially with the performances we've seen this season, I think you'd be hard pressed to say that United are like much worse off when he's not in the team. And that's a slightly different conversation to have as opposed to someone like Toney, where the value is really quite evident, or someone like Mitrovic for Fulham last summer, for example, where the value is evident because of what the numbers and the statistics put on the table, say.
Yeah, but if you look at what Rashford's achieved in his best seasons for Man United, you're looking at one of the best players they've had in the last 10 years. You're looking at somebody that any club in Europe, I think in Barcelona, were linked to him at one point. And knowing that he's got 4 years left on his contract and what he might be able to achieve across those 4 years, if you could get him back to playing at his best, leading up to the age of 30, you couldn't replace Marcus Rashford for £70 million. That's the problem. Don't forget, I've talked about Sancho. You're going to be taking a massive hit on him if you decide to sell him. Anthony, you're taking
Sancho
a hit on.
was worth 70 million when Manchester United paid that for him. There might have been a slight overpay, but he's definitely not worth that now, considering the circumstance in which he's in to the club, you know?
But you can't take hits on all those. You can't take him. And don't forget Mason Greenwood. Like that's a player that should have been in this conversation of being a £100 million footballer. And he is worth practically nothing to him now. So that's already 3 players. And then you've got a 4th now in Rashford that was totally unexpected to be in this situation.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
We just the only thing I think about it that I think might be interesting is that we talked about PSR and look, we're not going to go into the nuts and bolts of it right now. But there is something that if you sell a homegrown player, you basically bank the entire profit, right? Because there's no fee that you have to amortize. There's nothing you have to pay off in terms of those debts. And that in itself is, therefore worth more. And it's why we're seeing a lot of homegrown players. We talked about this in the summer, homegrown players moving on, fans being a bit upset about it because actually it allows the club to bank the entire lot in one go.
Yeah, I mean, there is that argument, which I guess you could look into. I mean, let's not forget, like when it comes to profit and sustainability regulations, like Man United also drive a bigger commercial side of a business than pretty much anybody else out there. So where other clubs can't factor that in as heavily, like Man United's commercialization is just way beyond what most teams have.
Fair. Yeah, fair. Okay. All right. Let's move on from Rashi and move on to number 4.
Well, it's a player I just kind of mentioned there in a Rashford comparison. At number 4, if we're going to look at £100 million transfers, then we do have to address the issue of actually how much Ivan Toney will be worth if he makes a summer transfer move. Now, obviously, there was a lot of talk coming into this January window about whether he might join Arsenal or Chelsea. And if that was going to happen, how much would it cost? A year ago, I would say the clubs were looking at Ivan Toney for the first time, really, big clubs, and thinking, okay, well, what could he do? What would his value be? And I think they'd have been looking at early doors, £55 million. Then it gets a bit deeper and, okay, that might not be plausible. Goes through his whole betting ban, comes back into this winter. And suddenly you've got a player that's being talked about legitimately as a 70 to 80 million pound player. Now, I've seen a report recently talking about him as a 100 million pound player if Brentford do decide to sell him. There's also we have to consider whether he was to sign a new contract at Brentford, which was talked about, and having clauses within that would allow him to go, both either on his side or on Brentford's side, to guarantee a certain amount of money, and whether that might become feasible. I have my doubts, I have to admit, over Ivan Toney being a £100 million football, because my personal hunch is that where I could see somebody paying £100 million for Marcus Rashford if he was made available, I'm not sure Toney quite fits the bill of being a £100 million footballer. And if he is, who's going to actually pay it? You're pretty much looking at Chelsea and Chelsea only in my eyes. I don't believe Arsenal would go £100 million on him.
No.
I know that there's interest from Man United to a small degree, and I mentioned Tottenham, I think, on Patreon, and there is definitely an element, but neither of those clubs are going to pay £100 million for him. So I think we have to include him in the conversation because there's a legitimacy to it, and we know that he's ambitious and wants to transfer. Will he be £100 million transfer? That's going to be the question. Brentford would love him to be. They would accept that, I think. They would accept him leaving if he was £100 million. Their problem is him going to 70 to 80. Yeah,
exactly. Well, I mean, the other thing with this is that you mentioned the contract, and this is something we're going to feed into a little bit more across the course of this ranking, I'm sure. But Ivan Toney's contract expires in summer 2025. So it comes to a point here where either he signs a new contract that has an amount in it or a release clause in it that he feels is acceptable and approachable if he wants that transfer, as he's been pretty clear on, and that's fine. You can be open about what you're looking for and what you want. But he's, even in those interviews back, he was like, yeah, let's see. I've made no secret of the fact that I want to go and challenge at the top end and challenge for trophies and try and become England's number 9. And that's all fine, well and good. But he's not going to sign a contract, I don't think, a new extension with Brentford if the contract says it's going to be £100 million. Because I think as much as he rates himself and he backs his own ability, he would also be like, well, why would I price myself out of a move in that regard? And if he doesn't sign a new contract, then Brentford are about to enter this summer the last 12 months of that contract, and therefore their negotiating power is in some way reduced.
Yeah, I totally understand that. The reason that he's listed higher in the ranking than Rashford, I know it sounds weird because I've just said, well, Rashford's a £100 million player all day long, and I'm not sure Toney is, but there's more chance of Toney making a transfer. Yeah, so that's why I've done it this way around. Ivan Toney has 1 England cap. I mean, if you were paying £100 million for a striker, you'd like to think they've got a bit more than that under their belt by the age of 27. Late bloomer. Look, he has been. He absolutely has been. There's how many years ago was he joined? He joined Brentford from Peterborough in 2020, right? So he's done well. He's done very well to suddenly get to this height. Let's see. Look, if he can, I think the way to basically figure this out will be across the rest of this season. If he goes on a goal blitz or signs a new contract or makes the England squad for the Euros, suddenly his price rockets. And that's where he might actually get towards that £100 million figure.
What's really weird is that Ollie Watkins is 3 months older than Ivan Toney with a relatively secure Premier League record, who's been excellent this season. And I don't see anybody talking about Ollie Watkins as a £100 million footballer. And I think that if you were to give me a choice between those two strikers, I would bite your hand off for Watkins all day long. And
yeah, I mean,
that's what I find really interesting about this entire situation.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some murmurings about Watkins and a transfer last summer, but nothing obviously came through.
And nothing in this range either. No one was like, oh, I'm going to pay £100 million for Ollie Watkins.
No, they're not going to, are they?
It's just an interesting comparison to make. Obviously, two players have relatively similar upbringings in terms of both played for Brentford, and they're relatively similar ages. They were both relatively late bloomers in terms of getting to the Premier League and making a mark. I just find it mad that Toney is being put in this conversation and Watkins isn't.
He's a self-promoter. I think he's put himself in that conversation.
Yeah, well, maybe so. Maybe the associations of a bad boy, with the situation he's gone through, has given clubs a Jesus complex. They're going to try and fix him. So we'll see how we go.
It's funny, isn't it? You consider the two people I've just talked about, Rashford and Toney, and what their last year has looked like. Rashford's had a nightmare season, all sorts of off-field headlines about how he's living his life. And then you've got Ivan Toney, who just served a long ban for betting, which obviously hugely frowned upon, despite the fact he's made to wear a football kit with a betting sponsor. So you can figure out the ethical morals within football that surround that. But both of them considered to have issues, yet also both considered to be £100 million footballers. That old world.
Wild. Go on then. Let's go to number 3.
Number 3 is Mo Salah. Really interesting this. 4 months ago, Liverpool rejected an offer for Salah that was about £100 million, but with add-ons that would get him towards being worth £150 million. And that was obviously to take him to the Saudi Pro League. Now, generally, the Saudis have steered away from mega transfer fees. So I was surprised when they actually put in a verbal offer that was that significant to Liverpool. And Liverpool obviously batted it away. This is a player that turns 32 in the summer. Jurgen Klopp's going to be leaving Liverpool. The Saudis come back in. How much are they willing to pay for him? Al Ittihad are the team that he would be expected to join, given that's what was the situation was last time around. He is Liverpool's top earner, but obviously he would earn more than that if he moved to Saudi Arabia. Given that they are going to go through some transition, given that Salah's contract does expire a year later, and there is some doubt still as to whether he signs it because he's not given any indication on where his head's at right now. This is interesting. I didn't really expect Salah to be considered as the next £100 million transfer. And it's part of me still thinks he'll stay at Liverpool anyway.
Maybe a couple of years ago, maybe if Real Madrid were really looking for that right winger to take them back to the top level a couple of years ago.
It's Saudi or nothing here, isn't it?
Yeah, this is a weird one in that there isn't going to be a top European club that pays £100 million for a player of Salah's age, I don't think. I think Real Madrid in particular have had their fingers burned a little bit with the whole Eden Hazard saga and what happened after that. So there does feel, and also they're changing strategy that has meant that they're buying younger, fine, all of those things. It is weird that with everybody else on this list, you're talking about a variety of clubs who might come in here and make the difference or at least be interested. Whereas I think with this one, it is very much feels like it's one way or no way.
Yeah, exactly. I found it really hard to figure out where Salah would be in a list, but I think this is right because it's right in the middle. I think that's literally where Salah's future sits right now. You're half just expecting him to say, look, we've lost Klopp. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to put you through that right now. We're not losing. You're not losing everything. I'll be here for you. But then I also think that if a bid did land and it was £100 million or more, Liverpool will have to think, should we just sell him? Because we're never going to get this money again for Mo Salah. And it does actually help us take this team on because we're not even sure we need a replacement because we might already have a front line that's equipped to go without him, given what we've seen recently while he's been at AFCON. Liverpool still continuing to attack well, still continuing to score goals, still succeeding. But they could also strengthen in other places and make sure that the next manager can refit his team as he sees needed. So I'm honestly straight down the middle on this, but Mo Salah could definitely have a situation that arises whereby he does become the next £100 million footballer.
Yeah, I find this one really interesting because it's not just about footballing impact. It's about the fact that the Saudi Pro League sees Salah as the global icon of the Arab world in football, and therefore to bring them Salah to the project would give it that sense of sort of homeward legitimacy, and all of the kind of geopolitical aspects of this make it incredibly interesting. And it's also why there's only one place he could go here that would be willing to pay this kind of money. But when those two borders start to blur, I think makes this really interesting. I agree with you. I don't know if I have loads more to add on it, apart from this is going to be turmoil, I think, for Liverpool. Obviously, we've seen Virgil van Dijk already coming out and being like, I don't know what the future looks like. Now, his contract doesn't expire till the same summer as Salah's, but equally, it's it's another one that Liverpool fans are going.
Trent too, mate. Trent's same
hitting
time.
Us with just blow after blow after blow. I don't think so in many ways, and I'm with you. I think that both Salah and Van Dijk probably stay. Van Dijk more so. I would say that I'm pretty sure that Virgil van Dijk will be playing in a Liverpool shirt next season. I'm about 60-40 on Salah in terms of 60%. I think he'll stay 40%. I wonder if Liverpool actually go, look, Mo, this is a wild opportunity for us to be able to actually take that cash flow and reinvest and completely, rehaul this squad under a new era. Maybe he would do that because that kind of sense of, okay, this is something fresh, something new.
Hey, I actually put my personal view on it is that I think it would be a great time to cut ties if that offer came in again. I think it's perfect that you do lose him at the same time as Klopp, and that you actually okay, that's all gone now. That era is behind us. The Klopp and Salah era is gone. We move on. We're still a great team. We've got a load of money behind us. We've still got whoever's in charge, like say Xabi Alonso's in charge. He's got great ideas too. Let's go again. Imagine being us, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, wow, it's going to be very, very interesting. Very, very interesting.
I thought that would be the shortest segment anyway. So,
I think it's more cut and dry than quite a lot of them. It's like either that offer comes in and Liverpool decide it's time to start afresh, or they don't, and therefore it's a non-starter. That one, it feels quite binary, whereas the rest of them feel a little bit more up in the air with all the things going on.
Absolutely, yeah. Look, I've talked about Kylian Mbappe's influence that would be felt across this episode. I talked about Marcus Rashford being potentially the man that could replace him at PSG if they wanted to go and sign a £100 million footballer. But there's a better option. His name's Rafael Leão. He's got a whopping clause in his contract. It's 175 million euros, which equates, for reasons of this show, to about 149 million pounds.
Or nearly $200 million.
This is a big one, mate. This is a big one if we are going to see it come off. Word so far is that Milan would insist on that full clause being met. Now, obviously, we do see situations whereby players have these crazy clauses, and it's kind of just a sign of if you're going to leave this club, it's going to be hard. But with Leão, 175 million euros means 175 million euros by all accounts. Now, there have been reports recently that PSG already starting to make inroads with Leao's camp on whether he'd be interested. Let them know that they would like him to come in if Mbappé does leave, and that it kind of looks like, to me, to be honest, that is the top target to replace Kylian Mbappé. This is early stages, very early stages. But there was a report today, in fact, that Mbappé is going to make a decision this week. Now, I've read that 4 or 5 times before.
Yeah, I read that last week.
But if Mbappé does make an announcement like that, and given that Klopp's just made an announcement and Xavi's made an announcement, he might as well make an announcement this week as well.
I hope he makes a documentary like Griezmann.
Yeah, just come up with a better name for it. I'll call it the same, actually. What was it? I Am Legend.
No. The decision one first. Remember?
The decision one first, not the legend one.
La Décision.
Yeah, let's do Decision. That'll be fine. I'm happy for Mbappé to do that. But yeah, he obviously signed a contract extension last year, and he's contracted until 2028. So Milan have got him tied up, but do they realistically think that they're keeping this player until 2028? Probably not, but they know that no matter what happens, they're going to be winners from this situation. He's 24 years old. He would absolutely rip it up at PSG. He might even get me liking PSG. Who knows? I love him. And if you're looking for an Mbappé replacement, it's him. He's him.
There's no better, is there? That's the one you're kind of looking at and going, is there anyone who could step into these shoes?
A lot of money,
easier than Rafael Leão? Yes, but if you're replacing Kylian Mbappé, I think it's quite interesting that PSG are about to get Neymar'd. Like, do you remember what happened to Barcelona after Neymar left, and they splashed all that money on Ousmane Dembele and Coutinho and all these players who were meant to fill the void? And none of them did. And I wonder if PSG have seen that and gone, right, let's make sure that we have contingency plans in place rather than absolutely panicking and going on one and actually it ending up being a disaster as it did for Barcelona. This feels to me like the most sensible move if Mbappé does decide to go. And I think that PSG are smart enough to know that they will just have to pay that clause. And to be honest, the idea of Dembele and Leão running down the either wings is terrifying for opposition. Yeah. Not that Mbappé and Dembele isn't, but there is something about the kind of freshness of someone like Leão coming in and the impact that would give. I think it would be incredibly entertaining.
I think stylistically it's great. I think ego-wise he's got it. I think in terms of replacing the commercial aspect that Mbappe's got, I think Leão has that potential, like globally, to become that household name. I don't think he's quite there yet. I don't think, in the broader football world, there's a general sense of understanding of just how good this guy is. But he'll show everyone. There's no doubt about that. And in Liga, it's fail-proof. That's the thing I want with Leao's next deal. You see him get linked to either the Premier League or La Liga, and I don't know about it, man. I don't know about that. It has to be so right, or it could go so wrong. And it scares me that Leao's career goes wrong. Yeah. And I just feel like PSG shouldn't go wrong because he's too good for that, and that could then lead to something else a few years later when he's 27, 28.
Mbappé at Real Madrid.
Real Madrid, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as he goes out the other side. Yeah, I would like to see Leão somewhere where he is constantly having to prove himself. But I do agree with you that obviously this has less chance of failure. I think that there is always that slight sense of, is it a little bit more obscurity? And I would suggest that, from my perspective, at the very least, Serie A to Liga represents a minor step down. And that's from someone who likes and watches a fair bit of Liga. So this isn't coming from a place of, I don't like the French league. I do. I just think that would be a step down in terms of slight quality level across the board. But also, I would probably add that he is currently at one of the most storied clubs in European history. Now, PSG remain, if a very talented upstart, but still an upstart. You look at the age of these clubs and what they've, achieved across the back of European seasons. Now, we are in the age of the upstart. So it's not to say that this is not going to work or it would be a failure. But I do think there is something. He's currently wearing the 10 shirt at one of the most storied clubs in Europe. And something in me draws for Leão to stay where he is. But I appreciate that might be a little bit of fantasy living.
Oh, mate, I'd love it. I'd love Leão to stay at Milan for life. Definitely. Not going to happen, is it? Not going to happen.
Probably
We'll
not.
see. £149 million is a lot of money, but it's PSG, so it really doesn't matter. So if he's not the next man to be worth £100 million in the transfer market, there is one man who is almost certain to go in this bracket in the summer, and that is Victor Osimhen. Here we go. This one has to be number one because he's basically said he's leaving. He says he knows where he wants to go. He's hinted that he wants to go to the Premier League. Seems like that to me. Victor Osimhen is going to be a £100 million transfer. I don't know for sure he's going to be the next one because one of these other four might actually get the deal before it happens with Osimhen if it's not until the end of the summer transfer window. But he's a top target of Chelsea, and I have to say I do expect Chelsea to put everything into this, and actually it wouldn't surprise me if they had an agreement in place for the start of the summer window, such as their need for a player like this. So you've got a player who's already made up his mind.
John Obi Mikel's been working well hard behind the scenes.
Oh yeah, it didn't even that hard to be honest. He's just like, you're going to Chelsea. Osimhen's going, so that side of it's done. Like, he's not staying at Napoli. The clause.
Well, I mean, he can't. And this is it. Again, this is coming from a place of love for Napoli. I last year watching Napoli win the league again was one of the great delights of the season. I absolutely loved it. Every second of it, I enjoyed. And watching the Spalletti work of art being pulled apart by De Laurentiis and every failed manager he throws in charge to try and salvage it has been heart-wrenching. But if you're Victor Osimhen, you're like, well, I can't stay here. And I think that if they'd gone and won the league again, if they'd been able to build on this and actually put something together that had allowed them, I think there would have been an argument to say, well, we're better for you right now, Victor. Instead, there is no doubt in my mind that he's like, what on earth would I stay here for?
Yeah, exactly. And as I say, he talks about the Premier League, he hints about the Premier League. I believe he's picked the Premier League as his next destination. I don't really see where else he's going to land right now. Once upon a time, I might have said Real Madrid, but there's no signs of Real Madrid going down this pathway at the moment.
It would make sense. They do still need a 9, even if they sign Kylian Mbappé.
But they tend to have quite a long-term strategy of who they're going for. And I feel like this would be a bit more reacting to a situation. That's the only reason I'd be surprised about it right now. But I completely understand what you're saying. Chelsea will make him an offer. They will. It's just whether he wants to join Chelsea, really. I mean, there is financially, no problem. Forget PSR. Forget all of that stuff. Chelsea could make a deal happen financially to sign Victor Osimhen. What they can't give him is Champions League football. That's interesting. That is quite interesting because while it's not the be-all and end-all, and sometimes you just have to accept that, like, okay, might have to be a bit patient here because Chelsea are going to be playing Champions League football again at some point in the next couple of years. It's interesting he's not going to be getting it straight away. But who else is he going to go and sign? Are Arsenal going to kind of match that money that they spent on Declan Rice to go and buy Victor Osimhen? I was going to say earlier, the clause that we're talking about here is at least £102 million. I think it's more than that, but the sort of money that's being talked about at the moment, because the clause has never been fully exposed, but from all the indications, it converts to be about £102 million at least. So let's bump it up. It's probably £110 million, right? Maybe more. Are Arsenal going to... I can't see Arsenal being able to pay that. I know I've been burned on this. We've talked about it before. But...
They found the money for Rice last summer.
They found the money for Rice. Look, and they have got champions. They are going to be in the Champions League, and we should probably be judging Arsenal differently now. And they are one of the clubs, actually, that when it comes to sustainability, when it comes to having the ability to spend, they have leeway. They have the freedom to actually do this as we move forward. And that is also interesting because it's still a lot of money for Arsenal, but I don't think it would it's not going to bankrupt him like it might have done once upon a time. And I just feel like, do you want to go head to head with Chelsea for this one? I know they've gone head to head with Chelsea multiple times recently. Didn't get Mudryk. They did get Declan Rice. But Osimhen is he feels more Chelsea than Arsenal to me. I don't know why. I just feel like
he's going to be torn between his allegiances because we've seen him talking to John Obi Mikel, but he also, when he won Africa Player of the Year in January, he spoke about it. He's like, I owe so much of my success to Kanu. And I was like, oh, maybe Kanu's on the blurb. And
Agent Kanu.
Agent Kanu's getting involved as well. So who knows? Who knows? Yeah. He's spoken to both of them in recent weeks. He's really
man's being pulled from pillar to post.
Exactly.
But he's brilliant, and I can't wait to see him in the Premier League. Is he fail-proof? I think so, at both those clubs. I think that he can't really go far wrong in terms of scoring goals unless that Chelsea curse strikes again.
I was about to say, you are never going to find me saying that a Chelsea number 9 is fail-proof because I've been burnt by that before.
Mate, how could he fail? How would you fail to get Victor Osimhen scoring goals?
I thought this
if that happens, burn the place down. Burn the place down.
I thought it went Fernando Torres' side. I was like, there's absolutely no way. This was the banker. This is the one that couldn't fail. And it did. So, yes, I think he would be an excellent signing for Chelsea, obviously. He's absolutely class. He has all the attributes necessary to succeed in the Premier League. He has that goal scoring nous, that footballing intelligence to get in behind, the skill to be able to work back to goal or running in behind, the physicality to match defenders. He's complete and utter all-round forward. There is almost no weaknesses to Victor Osimhen's game. So wherever he goes, you assume he's going to succeed, but you won't find me saying that anything fail-proof is going to be in a Chelsea number 9 shirt, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
That's a step too far even for me, but I do agree with you on this one.
So I'd say he is the most likely £100 million transfer that we see next. Extra shouts, though, and I want you to make a quick argument for both of these players, whether you think it's possible or not possible. Because two players that kept jumping into my mind and I didn't end up sticking them into the top 5 were Florian Wirtz at Bayer Leverkusen and Jamal Musiala at Bayern Munich, who definitely could both be £100 million footballers. I'm just not sure. On Musiala, I'm just not sure he moves. But on Wirtz, who pays it? And will he go? I guess if Alonso goes to Liverpool, maybe he follows him. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a weird one. So Musiala's on the contract till 2026. It does feel like that contract extension is taking far longer than it should do. And I think it's set a couple of clubs on alert in terms of like, ooh, what's going on there? Just peeking ahead above the parapet. Wirtz is contracted till 2027. I do feel like there's a space that in which both of them are £100 million players. But the kind of caveat to that, Musiala maybe less so, because I think that Musiala on the wing is a little bit more of a natural transition. He can get out there and make a difference. We have seen him at points out there for Bayern, and actually Bayern a link with Wirtz. And I remember saying to someone, well, how does that work? Because that's Musiala's spot. And then like, well, they believe that Musiala's future actually might be on the wing. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Normally you get wingers coming inside to be number 10s, not 10s going outside to become wingers. But Wirtz does feel weirdly specific. Now, Bayer Leverkusen have set up in a number of different ways whilst he's been at the club, but he's usually been used as an out-and-out number 10 or as one of two number 10s behind a striker. And I've talked about this with various players before in different skill sets and different levels. But I think when there's a player who's this kind of specific in their role, you need to go to a club that has that specific role. And so like right now, under Klopp, would I be like Liverpool should sign Florian Wirtz? I would say no, because Liverpool don't play with a number 10, an out-and-out, number 10 as such. Yeah. Whereas I think that if Alonso went there, maybe things would change. Maybe they set up differently. I don't know quite what that looks like. Or he goes to a club that do play with that kind of out-and-out number 10. So I think that there is the capability for him to be a wonderful player. And look, I would say this, there is very little, as far as I'm concerned, between Wirtz and Musiala. I think Wirtz's passing is a lot cleaner. I think that Musiala's ability to dribble out of trouble is slightly better, although I do think that there is still an element of Musiala's game where it looks like he's about to lose the ball. Now, that might be just stylistic, but it just looks a little bit messier, perhaps, than what you expect. But his ability to get himself out of trouble and play out of pressure is truly quite remarkable. But two incredibly talented number 10s who, in the right fit and for the right team, and there's been a lot of links to Barcelona for Wirtz. Under the current system, no. What does Xavi's successor look like? Do they play with that player looking to be the number 10? Maybe that changes things. Maybe Wirtz plays as a kind of inside forward. There was talk of him being the Mo Salah replacement at one point. I'm not 100% sold on that, because those spaces that he picks up don't tend to be quite as wide as what Liverpool have played with Salah. But in the right place, I think both of these have the capability to be £100 million footballers. I think it won't quite take that to get Wirtz out of Leverkusen. I think it'll probably be around 75, 80 million. But if he doesn't move this summer and he has another phenomenal season, then who's to say, or he has an incredible Euros with Germany, who's to say that price can't go up?
Absolutely. Nice one, mate. That was a good little roundup on those two. You've done a better job than I would have done. So I'm glad you filled us in on those, because you never know. They could definitely come into that conversation.
100%. And they definitely should be considered around the conversation with the talent that both of them possess. So an interesting one in that regard. And that will round us off for the main segment. We'll be back after the break with some guru wisdom. Don't go anywhere.
I talk about this all the time, but I really do love coffee, Rank Squad. I've tried pretty much everything there is to offer out there, but recently I came across a new coffee experience that has blown my mind. Laird Superfood Creamers are crafted from the highest quality, all-natural, real food ingredients. I really don't think I'll be going back to anything else. My coffee journey feels complete. Are you ready to feel more energised, focused and supported? Go to lairdsuperfood.com and add nourishing plant-based foods to fuel you from sunrise to sunset. Use our promo, RANKS15, at checkout to save 15% off your purchase today. Our promo code, RANKS15, at checkout to save 15% off your purchase today.
Welcome back to Ranks FC, time for part 3. And of course, Guru Wisdom. Over to the boys.
Guru Wisdom, Guru Wisdom, Guru Wisdom.
Oh, the boys. Go on, the boys.
Go on, the boys.
Can hear them downstairs right now. We're recording a bit later than we normally record, and they're normally at school when we do this podcast. But because of the transfer window, I've been writing all afternoon, and Jack had to wait for me before he sets off to Fulham v Everton. So
it's got 0-0 written all over it, doesn't it?
Don't know. Usually when I don't go, remember, it's like...
when you don't go, we win. That is
we win 5-0.
Good news.
We win 5-0 when I don't go, mate. So
fantastic.
Remember that.
For it now.
So, because it's transfer deadline week, I thought, what shall I do? What shall I enlighten people on? I was like, what about my phone activity? What about how much I've been using my phone? What I've been doing with it? But yeah, just go down that route. So, not going to keep you all too long. We'll just run through a few insights into what I do most of the day, which is pick up my phone most of the time. So, we'll start right there. What is, Jack, the daily average of times I pick up my phone in this deadline week? What's my pickups?
Can you see this? Is this a number?
This is a number.
I don't even know. I would be scared to see this. I'm going to say 600.
No, it's actually not as high as that. 215 is my average number of times I pick up my phone. And I don't know if that's
less than 10. Oh, I suppose it's probably about 15 an hour when you're awake.
Yeah. And bearing in mind, a lot of the time I'm just holding it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, there is that. There is that.
There are some hours where I'm literally just sat there on my phone. So then I'm putting it down, picking it up, opening the screen, put it back down. That's a lot, wild. Really.
I didn't even know you could do this kind of thing. So this is exciting.
Well, you could look it up. Look up your stats while we're chatting if you want. What is the app I use most first after I pick it up? What do you reckon it would be?
WhatsApp.
It is WhatsApp, yeah. It's by a long way, it's WhatsApp, the first place. In America, mate, do you know they don't really use WhatsApp, most people?
Yeah, it's a really weird one. I struggle with it when we're communicating with people across the pond. It's my bread and butter for everything.
Everything. In the UK, everyone just uses WhatsApp. The only people I speak to on iMessage are literally my mum and dad and my aunts and stuff like that. Or people I don't know and I'm just communicating with. That's all we use iMessage for. WhatsApp is for everything. I'm sure there are some people in America that do use it, but barely anyone I know in America does. But always, that is where all my friends are.
The
and that
only
is where most of
person
my work
that I
is.
speak to on text is Lucy, because we said it years ago. We just started texting each other, and I know for a fact that if I have a message on my iMessage, it's from Lucy. So it's actually become a really useful tool. So I can separate that from the rest of my world. I'm because often there's 200 WhatsApps. I'm I can't be bothered to go through all these. But if Lucy texts me, I know it's her. It's very useful.
Very good. Very good. My daily average screen time.
11
This is actually
hours?
down at the moment. It's actually down at the moment. It's on 9.5 hours at the moment, which says down 10% from last week. It's Tuesday, maybe. I thought Monday and Tuesday I probably had been on my phone quite a lot. Interesting. That's an interesting stat. But yeah, 9.5 hours of my day. How many hours am I actually awake for? None.
Yeah, 16.
I'm awake for 16 hours and I'm on my phone for 9.5. That's sad, isn't it?
Yeah, it's wild actually when you think about it in context. It's one of those really strange ones. Mine's 9 hours. I found my pickups, which are average 165. So on my phone a little bit less than you.
Okay.
But that does add up because you are on the phone to people and contacts, whereas I am just texting you, being any news?
Any chance you can do this podcast with me?
What are your notifications? That's an interesting one.
My notifications are 325.
So I could trump you there. 450 a day.
I have everything switched off apart from WhatsApp and X. I'll tell you what, the best thing about the transfer window closing is the moment that window closes, my Twitter notifications are off. I do not have Fabrizio Romano and co. Plettigo popping up the top of my screen until the summer. Unfortunately, I have to have a load of notifications on. But yeah, probably all... Actually, no, WhatsApp, I don't get notifications, actually. So it's just coming from X and Patreon, so I know when our podcast has gone out. Most used apps, WhatsApp, obviously. Second, this is actually a surprise. I've actually started using Twitter. So actually second is X, yeah. So that's a surprise because I've actually had to start using that. Third, YouTube.
That's probably for the boys.
That is 100% because of Dylan. Because number 4 is Ball Run 2048, which is a game where a bloke chases balls around.
Yeah, well, there you go. There's your different. I think my one would probably have Instagram in that mix. Yeah, WhatsApp, X, Chrome, and Instagram, and live score.
Live score, blimey.
There you go. There's me checking all of the scores all the
You're
time.
checking the AFCON and Asia Cup in the middle of the night.
I'm watching those usually. So it's
true.
just making keeping an eye on everything else at the same time, making sure that the Belgian second tier is still going off as I thought it might do tonight.
There you go. There's my wisdom, mate. Yeah, a little insight into my phone.
Great. Fantastic stuff. Dean's phone on deadline week. The bits and bobs you never knew you needed. And with that, we're going to call this a day. So all that's left for me to do is say thank you very much to our transfer guru, Mr. Dean Jones.
Cheers, mate.
I've been Jack Collins. This has been Ranks FC. We will be back later in the week looking back at January as a whole. We're going to wait till deadline day passes and then do a little bit about some of the best deals that have gone on across the window. It's probably going to be a little bit more niche than usual. Normally when we do these, we talk about £100 million transfers, etc. We're going to look a little bit deeper later on in the week on this feed about some of the deals that have gone down and maybe some of the steals that you might have missed across the continent as well as in the Premier League. We'll wait till deadline day is done yet, though, to make sure that we don't miss anything out there. Thank you so much for listening as ever, and we'll see you very shortly, Rank Squad. Take it easy. Peace. Final seconds of the game. A chance to score, and the chance has gone begging. If your business's commerce platform keeps missing the target on golden opportunities, get the MVP you deserve. Get Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide. Whether you're a garage entrepreneur or IPO ready, Shopify is the only tool that you need to start, run, and grow your business without the struggle. Shopify puts you in control of every sales channel. So whether you're selling signed football boots from Shopify's in-person POS system or you're vending vintage shirts on Shopify's all-in-one e-commerce platform, you are covered. And once you've reached your audience, Shopify has the internet's best converting checkout to help you turn them from browsers to buyers. What I love about Shopify is how, no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify gives you everything you need to take control and take your business to the next level. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. And Shopify is truly a global force, powering Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across over 170 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. This is Possibility, powered by Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ranks, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ranks to take your business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/ranks.